Yes.
It's quite all right. Nice haircut, Bill.
Hi.
Nice haircut.
Thanks. Did I do okay?
I think you did.
Do it myself.
Yeah, clippers out.
Yeah, back in the late '80s, I was going to this barber and his prices kept going up. So in college, there was a girl on dorm, one of the dorms who cut hair. She had this huge mirror. So I would watch what she did the whole time. So then I taught my wife to cut my hair. I had more hair then. And then it got to the point where there was hardly anything on top, and I did crew cut, so I've been doing a crew cut. But I had a crew cut done by a barber, who's since passed away, but in Goffstown at the Cutting Castle, Rick Creedon. And he always cut my hair for free because I was his pastor and all this. I got home and I had a hair this long, still sticking up the top of my head. And I said, I'm not gonna let him cut it.
Maybe that was.
It's a sight to see the thing that.
Maybe that was like a hint, like you should start tipping better.
Yeah, maybe, but, it's motorcycle riding season, so I'm keeping things every tight all the time.
Very aerodynamic.
Yeah, because otherwise you get off the bike and a chat, chin strap around your ear, and it's like, what's going on?
What did you do?
I did it. So we're good?
Not yet. Oh, you had it. You good? I don't leave it
Did we
like
have
that.
this specific agenda?
Have fun.
No, we're not today.
I'll check in and see if it's still.
I just sent it out last
All right.
week.
Bye,
This week?
gentlemen, you're on. You gotta remember to hit your mics though.
Thank you.
See you later.
She sent it to us,
Okay,
so.
we'll review it, it's okay.
Okay, welcome to the August 7th meeting of the Master Plan Subcommittee. As we begin this evening, our agenda is to review the questionnaire and the minutes from our last meeting and conduct any other business and then adjourn. I'd like to suggest as we begin that we limit our time to an hour, if you don't mind. Not that I have an agenda afterwards, but just so that we're not getting loopy. And it will keep us on task to realize that we have some work to do, because that's what we're here for, as opposed to pondering questions, et cetera.
Agreed.
Then also, with that said, I gave you a hard copy of a Word doc I sent you earlier today, but that is 9 pages long, which is 9 sections of the questionnaire as it stands right now from 2003. And if we can tackle 1, 2, or 3 sections at a time, we should be able to get this done in a timely fashion, even early. Probably by the first meeting in September. And then we can fine tune things the second meeting in September and then submit it to the planning board at their work session, the first meeting in October. And get their yay or nay and then go forward with that. Does that seem reasonable?
Yes.
Sure. All right. So, So under, the first section is respondent profile.
Sorry, Bill, before we jump in from the front end, just from a clarification perspective, when the prior survey indicates, with the assistance of Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, can you just describe a little bit where and what role they would have in our meetings?
At this point in time, we have not employed them.
Okay,
And that's the reason why we're having this subcommittee, so that we are trying to be cost-effective.
Yep.
And fiscally responsible.
so,
Because, like I mentioned last time, the planning board does not have a budget. And so if we were to go forward with anything funding from them, it's non-existent.
Yep.
And we've gone through the whole process of trying to get funding in a variety of ways that has failed, primarily because the last attempt with a grant from workforce housing was an expectation that there'd be an implementation of that goal.
yes, okay, yep, wanted that
so-
on the record.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we're not, at this point, unless the planning board changes their mind, at this point in time, we're not looking to, I think we have the framework to work from and what we have from the past, because beginning chapters or sections are all demographic type of stuff
Yep.
that is readily available to us. It's not, I mean, it wasn't available then.
no, I agree.
Because
Yep.
the growth of the internet and the opportunity to do that research on our own is available to us. So,
Agreed and understood, just wanna,
right, yep,
And before getting into questions, I'd like to, this is a material that is the result of a discussion with Greg Smith that he submitted to me that I think would help our process. And specifically, it's around question criteria. I've been through sessions before where it can get wordsmithing and becomes more about wordsmithing than the question.
Yep.
There's about 6 points here. I tried to make copies. I ran out of toner at the house, but I can make copies here. But I like to submit it one, and then bring your attention to the top right corner, which is the survey questions should. I can say them for anyone who's listening in, if that'd be helpful.
yep,
The first is that to not lead participants to artificially affirm or reject a topic.
yep, great.
Be unique, clear, and discerning.
that's number 2.
Correct. Number 3, educate participants where applicable. 4, not imply judgment on topic, available answers, or on the participant. Number 5, provide selectable answer options for improved analytics and incorporate an other category for additional commentary. Lastly, number 6, be considerate of questions that exceed the awareness of the average resident.
Okay,
And I'll provide that to you.
Yeah, agreed on guiding principles.
yep,
I can put them on the whiteboard if that helps while we're having a discussion.
that's fine.
Actually, I have a second copy for myself, so if that can be
Sure.
shared for now.
Okay,
Yeah, I've seen this, but yes,
I
yeah.
can just take a
I
picture.
have
of it.
not
Yeah,
seen
okay,
this.
yep.
No, that's fine. Yeah, it's fresh to everyone, yeah?
I'll
Yeah.
just take a picture of it later.
You could write it if you want to, though, Sean. I mean,
I have a copy right here.
yeah, that's,
So, and don't let that hold you up, Bill,
Yeah.
and just get them on the board.
yeah.
No, I think that's a good summary of what was discussed last time as well. Because I think that, what was it, number 6 was awareness of who were,
Awareness of the,
Yeah.
sort of the knowledge of the
so,
general.
so.
Who is
like-
who is the survey taker?
Right, so number 17 is an example of that. Protect rivers and streams from riparian buffers.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point.
What's a
What's a
riparian?
riparian? Yeah,
Pertaining to streams.
yeah,
Right.
right.
So
Right,
it's
even
like-
if you knew it,
So you,
how would you know it applying to streams?
right,
Okay,
but it's like, it's a redundant statement.
Sure, sure.
And even in like,
there are, it's, yeah, there are examples in here that we can touch on.
Yeah, yeah, there was
And also
another,
dry erase marker up there to, right on the board at this time.
Oh, does it
No,
not
it's
write?
not.
Oh, then,
yeah.
Oh, boy.
Really? It's not like a whiteboard?
yeah, there's a projector there. The markers have on and off buttons that don't look like that battery.
Get the MIT guy to figure it out for us.
All right,
All right.
let's,
Once in the guy, always in the
Yeah,
right,
yeah, so no, so we can, are we good to start on?
yeah, let's jump right in on
Okay.
question one. Section one, respondent profile. Any edits on question one?
Just a question on question one, which is on the delivery side, how, and not to let this spiral, but when we're how are we determining business owner, I guess, specifically? You know, and obviously an implication that someone who would be a business owner and where, and also not a resident.
Correct.
Right? So how do we, I guess, determine that and deliver that? I guess we don't have
So
to answer that question specifically,
We
but,
can even step back, like, why, I mean, why do we want this question? What are we trying to gain from it?
well, I know the resident side, the resident thing, I think.
So-
Well, actually, you kind of have to be a resident, right?
I
So
would
it
hope
might
so.
be redundant, that's actually fair, but how would this fall into a non-resident's hand, I guess is kind of the,
It wouldn't.
part of the question, right? I mean, if,
It wouldn't. Well, it would, in this respect, if the business owner owns property in Ware, he's a non-resident.
Or second homes, you're just,
Right.
everyone's getting the tax
So
bill.
he or she would have a piece of property they own that runs their business. So as an example of that is Gutter Done up here on Concord Stage Road is a gutter company, and the owners live in Dunbarton.
elsewhere.
And so that was one of the things I would like to see added, if not in Ware, what is your residence?
Yeah.
So that we have an idea of what, the reason I would want that there is because of the business profile of what we want to understand going forward with that other section on economic development. How many businesses are owned by people outside the community?
Yeah.
So that would be my focus or
Okay.
my understanding of what I would like to explore. Because
So would this be, I guess,
so I don't know how you would ask that.
yeah, right,
Both, are you a non-resident business owner
yeah.
would be another way to put it.
And if so, where do you live?
Right,
Right, yeah.
yeah, no pun intended there, right?
Yeah,
Primary residence, yeah.
And then primary residence. Okay,
and similarly, are we defining resident strictly to primary residence, or are we considering within this question vacation homes, second homes, et cetera?
Yeah, it would be nice to dial in and see who lives here and who lives here.
so,
And how they respond, frankly.
right. So
And that may be a second
if
question,
we
by the way.
leave, if
don't-
we
don't
leave
need
that,
to-
if we leave that alone and address that concern in question 5,
Okay, so I'm
and
fine
to
with
say,
that, but
and to
just
say
capture it.
second home,
Right,
type of, because when I went through the responses, a lot of,
Yeah.
a section of response dealt with watching the development on East Shore Drive on Horace Lake, which is overwhelmingly second homes for Ware residents
Right.
as opposed to outside, but there's a growing number of outside, especially on that side of the lake. And then down in the cove towards Abijah Bridge, there's a lot of second homes that are non-resident. So that would be helpful to be discerning about that.
Yeah, as long as we capture it.
Yes.
I'm not too, whether, either 1 or 5 is fine.
Okay. Any other input on number 1?
Well, you could potentially put the business side with question 3. If you're a business owner, do you live in, like, do you live in where? And potentially, like, the 5 question is really, like, pertaining to the structure.
Yep.
So what if I'm a second home manufacturer, like, it's 2 different aspects. Potentially don't want to muddle that.
Yep. All right, so let's put the question of a non-resident business owner under question 3.
Under 3. That's fine.
That work?
As long as we capture it, that's
Yep.
fine. And we don't have to know the answer to this right now, does the survey have the ability to capture the if-then of, we are going to be able to know and identify full-time residents' answers and have a data set, business owners' answers and have a data set, non-resident business owners and have a data set, and second home respondents and have a data set? Do we know that? So who is answering in what way?
I don't know how that works.
Okay,
I'm not
that's okay.
I'm not a
Just-
Survey Monkey man,
Okay, let's,
but the Survey Monkey people will capture, will be
Okay.
able
I'm
to,
kind of a monkey person.
that's
will
right.
be able to do that, right?
Okay, as long as we
It's on
can,
the record.
yeah, okay, very good.
No, to your point, Dan, I think that it.
Does that make sense? Do you know what
Yes.
I'm asking? Yeah.
Yes, so the
Okay.
clarity and the delineation is important, that there are not questions that then become secondary within a subsequent question.
Yeah.
Very clear up front. Are you a resident, non-resident?
Yeah.
Are you a resident business owner, non-business resident owner? Done.
Right. We'll correct it, and I want to be.
You could check.
What I think, so from a results perspective also, we should know how second home residents are responding.
Yes, excuse me,
Right.
primary resident, secondary resident?
know what I'm saying?
Yes,
Yeah.
so excuse me.
Yeah.
So are you when I said non-resident, that,
Yeah.
right, so primary residents, secondary residents?
So you want to make that, that
Well,
part of
this is,
question 1?
this is not going to be a part of the question. I want to clarify. So this is not a form of, I think we just captured it. I think we captured each of those pieces from the question. I'm asking about, and just want it on the record that we spoke about it, to inquire with the survey material itself. This is a results/data question that I'm asking, which
Yep.
is, if I want to compare second home answers to primary residents, can we do that? Or is it just going to be, here's how everyone responded, and we're only going to be able to know you have 8,000, you have 1,000 primary residence responses, you have 500 secondary residence responses, but we don't know how they filled out the rest of the survey.
My inclination is to the.
Do you know what I'm asking?
Yes, to the
Yeah.
former.
Yeah.
Right, to have more segmentations. In fact, that's one of the commentary that I had generally with the survey is towards how is it parsed out?
Yeah,
Right?
okay, yeah.
Right, so you want to see a distribution demographically of how
Yes,
this-
a distribution.
of how this question is being answered.
So I don't want to get bogged down in it anymore. I already spent too much time on it.
No, this
But-
is, it's really good to
Yeah.
think ahead to see how the data is going to be used.
Yes.
So we ask the right questions, so.
Okay.
And I have no experience in analytics or surveys, so I don't know how this works. But if you can let
Yeah.
us know.
Let's find out, I guess, is the
Yes,
point.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Good.
we'll keep that on the front burner
Okay.
for the development of the Survey Monkey
Yep.
data questions. I mean, we're going to take and input this information in, and then, obviously, the software will be able to pick and choose.
Yep.
based
I think
on
it
what
can,
we
by the
search
way.
for.
I just,
So, I don't know if it works the same as like QuickBooks or something to that effect. You can go in and say, what happened in this time period, and you get this information. I think our church software that we use can do that based on a month. What do we usually spend in this particular month compared to
Yeah.
5 years from ago, so. Okay. So we're good in question one. Question two.
Yeah.
I don't know what these parts of town are, to be honest. Like,
Okay, so,
Has this proven to be value add
Yeah.
thus far in the master planning that took place before? And is it a regular discussion with,
question.
with the planning board that these sort of segmentations?
no.
I would say remove the question.
So where people live doesn't impact the planning board's process. What impacts planning board's process is what zone those people live. Is it village? Is it rural ag? Is it residential? Is it commercial? And those are the parameters that we go from, as opposed to, well, we want to develop all of East Ware, which is underwater, which always puzzles me why people respond East Ware. Well, it's underwater.
Well, I think this is a
don't
question, maybe to your, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Sean, but, it's a simultaneous, does it matter, quote, and also, can it be answered, go to point 6, can it be answered by the average, can it be answered accurately?
North where, south where?
That's how I know, that would
Okay.
be my answer, I know it from Northware, and that, and that's it.
Yeah.
So,
So to answer Phil's question, we're in Village Center.
okay,
North Ware is technically anything north of the fire station.
Yeah.
like the police station, fire
Yeah,
station?
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
South Ware is anything south of Three Corners, or Three Corners and south. West Ware, I don't think that's even a parameter that anybody thinks. That would be.
I have
the
never
Deering-
heard that,
The Deering line.
actually.
So, within that context, we have a bunch of other, if you look at the zoning, or the villages that are existing, there are a host of other little villages that people know about and others don't. Clinton Grove, as an example, up at the top of Memorial Drive, where the big white building is a Quaker establishment, Quaker school, that's Clinton Grove. Where it stops, it's not that big. North Ware Village or Chase Village is another, it's part of North Ware, but that's where Blackbird is. That's Chase Village, from 114 to Center Road is Chase
Yep.
Village. Another would be Slab City.
I see that on Google Maps and I have no idea what it is. I live there.
Slab City was once a lumber type of landing, if you will, and that's the junction of Quaker Street and Thorndike. That's Slab City. And then you go down to South Ware, you've got the Dustin Tavern is one village, and all these villages had their own school. So like by my church, the guy who's just rehabbed
yeah, the schoolhouse there.
the old schoolhouse, which was Riverside Academy for eons. It was the school for that area. So there, and then there's a schoolhouse that's now on Deering Center Road that got moved there because it was gonna be demolished. I can't remember where that one was, but all these little schoolhouses really set the stage for various things, so.
So to that point, Bill, you have that encyclopedic knowledge. Does the average respondent,
Yeah.
and
No.
if the average respondent doesn't, which I think we agree, what's the utilization of the question in this form? Not much, I would argue, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, because
I agree to eliminate it. I don't think it benefits us.
Oh, so, just to throw it out there, is there a way to put options that would be helpful? Maybe the answer is no, but is there a subdivision, series of locations that we can say? My first thought would maybe just be Northware, Southware, because I do think the average respondent would be able to answer that. Then the question befalls us, is that data useful? Is it useful for us to know if respondents are from Northware and Southware? I don't know that it is, but they asked this question.
Yeah,
So-
I don't see how it benefits the the planning process or even the master plan of knowing where the respondents come from.
Okay.
In respect to that, and this statement is broad because there are some folks who are curious about the town. And so they know every road,
Sure.
okay? Then there are some who live in North Ware and they have no idea what South Ware is like because they do all this shopping in Warner or Concord. People I'm familiar with in South Ware don't even go to Concord. They go to Manchester. Or if you moved here from, like, say, Milford, your habit is Milford. That's where your grocery shop, that's where, and then you go over to Amherst to the Walmart and all that. So you're always going that way. So that's the dynamic of the town being so large that we don't have a town center, we don't have, whatever you bring to the table from your previous experience is what you set the tone for everything else.
Yeah.
So I've known people who've lived here for, say, 15, 20 years, and they've never been on X road before. They have no idea where it is, what it, and you can name a bunch of roads like that people don't know, because they don't explore. So I would be in favor of removing.
Great.
In totality.
The fewer questions, I think, the better, too, so.
Okay.
And so strike them too. And I think that dovetail as we go into number 3, because you had just mentioned, the location of the respondent is not necessarily pertinent.
Okay.
And so number 3, where it says, the business owner what street is usually located, I would say that would fall in line with 2 as being,
If the part you
Questioning
live
what
in
the
has a
value
name,
is.
what is it? That one?
yeah, the number 3, if you are a business owner, on what street is your business located?
Oh, I understand.
So, keeping in perspective of, question 1, 88% of the respondents answering the question were residents of town. 1.25% were business owners and 10.5 were both resident and owner. So with that said, when we come down to question 3, there were no street names, or very few. Which, I'll be honest, I think every response needs to be documented. And I don't know where those responses went to. I don't know if it's in a file someplace, but it's not in the report.
Oh, that's a good, right.
You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah.
So I think that if we're going to ask the question, we want to honor, and I'll get to it on a couple other areas that we need to look at, but if there are a few, what were they? If there were a few,
Yeah.
because that can tell us, number one, if you Google Maps where and scroll in on a particular area, you'll find numerous cottage industries. And that seems to be the historical predominance
Yeah.
of our community going back 100 years, 120 years or whatever. So, okay.
So just pulled up from the Hampstead Master Plan Survey, their first question kind of combines 1 and 3 for us. So they say, do you live in Hampstead, own property in Hampstead, or have a business in Hampstead? Select all that apply. That's just one method we could consider doing it. So then the options there are, I have lived in Hampstead my entire life, I have lived in Hampstead for 5 years or less, 6 to 10 years, 10 to 20 years, 20 years or more, I don't live in Hampstead, I own property, I own business, so just one way to consider doing that.
Yeah.
So if we did that, that would combine
1 and 3.
1, 3, and
Yeah.
7, 6, and 7.
Pretty much.
That was in the Hampstead
Yeah.
survey.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't capture plan, how long would you plan, but it would capture 6.
Yeah,
How long
we don't have to.
Yeah.
Just,
If we can come back to 3, and close out 3, because I like what you just said, Phil, to speak more on that. On the street location, I'm not sure that we landed
We didn't.
We didn't. My general sense is that it sounds like from what Bill was just saying, that there wasn't a high response rate on that anyway. Secondly, I think and I would, if I were to make an assumption, it would be that often I've seen, in my experience, I've seen that when anything can be directly revealing to the respondent, they'll omit the question.
Correct.
Right. So no, I don't want my answers to be,
Yeah.
to distill down to a street, which then could reveal. So I still would move to strike it. Number 3 in its entirety.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So if we did that, we need to put, are you a non-resident business owner into question 1? Because we talked about putting that in 3.
Yeah, so to simplify, 1 is, are you a primary or secondary resident? 1A, or call it 2, are you a primary resident business owner, a secondary resident business owner, or a non-resident business owner? The current, question 2, if you are a resident, what section, what village do you live in? That's been moved to strike that, as well as number 3, if you're a business owner, on what street are you located? Move to
Right.
strike that.
Okay. So we've effectively, we have question 1 edited as such. Question 4 becomes question 2. Is that right? We didn't,
Well,
Yes.
do you know?
Yep.
Question 4 becomes the effective question 2, because we've eliminated the old question 2 and the old question 3.
Yeah, it's all just, it's dependent, feedback, please, but
Yeah.
if question 1 is just on residency, and question 2 is just on business. Like,
Oh,
Are you
I
a resident,
understand.
non-resident, or excuse me, primary resident, secondary resident, question 1.
Okay.
Over.
Question 2,
Question 2,
I
business.
our business ownership.
Yep.
I understand.
Gotcha. Yep. That
Now,
works.
and Phil, I know that, just to come back, your comment, because they're very different presentations.
Yeah.
So, I want to just make sure that doesn't get
No,
lost.
it was just an observation of how they crafted their questions.
So question 1 then is, are you a resident of where, and you have 2 choices, a primary or secondary? Correct? Instead of yes.
Yes.
And then are you a business owner in where? Are you a primary?
Primary resident, business owner, secondary resident, business owner, non-resident. Could be argued if 1 and 2 provide enough distinction to matter,
Yeah,
but we went down that road earlier on, so I'll just,
it's fine.
So you want to add C to that?
It would be primary, secondary, and then non. So, yeah, A, B, and C.
Non-resident.
Be interesting if there are secondary resident business owners, but. But-
it's obtuse, it might be.
Well, it could be,
Yeah,
it could be in the sense that they're running an Airbnb.
It's fair. It's a good response.
Right.
Yeah,
Good example. yeah.
yep.
Okay, so 2 and 3 are gone, we've expanded 1 into 2 questions. All right. Number 4,
Just in addition, a suggestion here. I find myself curious, so do you rent? Do you own? I'm curious about sort of how many households we have where there's in-family renting or pseudo-renting, like, to get a sense of,
Yeah.
right?
so you want to put other?
Well, is this?
I'm not,
it-
go ahead.
I know what you're saying. Is the spirit? Is that in the spirit of this question? Meaning, I think the spirit of this question is asking, do you, for your primary residence, do you own or rent? Right? I think it coincidentally can also be interpreted as, do you own a rental property? Is that where you're getting at?
No, actually,
Or-
I find myself, no, I can see your interpretation. I was thinking about, sort of broadly hearing about, if I'm 24 years old and I would have accessibility to this survey, and I live with a family member,
Okay.
right? Because actually finding housing or, being able
Yeah.
to relocate, right, is becoming more challenging. And, I'd be curious if that's a point of interest. Right?
Oh.
We're thinking of, zoning, residential development, economic development, how that might coincide with sort of the mixes. And if if that is impacting the community.
So that is different than what I just said. it- Does this properly capture, I'm 20, just saying it like it is, I'm 24, I'm still living at home. Is that right?
Correct, as an
Okay.
example.
Yeah. Are those people gonna, again, this goes back to the delivery on the business side thing. Are these gonna be delivered to those people? They would be, I guess, right? Because if this goes out with a tax bill, that person is not gonna get it,
Correct.
right? So that person's actually not
We're
gonna fill this
But we're
out.
not limiting us to only that.
Fair enough. So I guess my point is, how would that be delivered in that scenario?
And that could be a limitation where it's too
Maybe the answer is
granular.
not, yeah, right.
Greg,
Oh, Greg.
you have a comment?
Greg Smith, Reservoir Drive. It just seems for this particular discussion, a relevant question might be, who is qualified to respond to the survey? Are you
Right.
issuing this survey to the entire world who's ever visited where? Are you limiting it to people who have legal residences plus own property or some other criteria? It seems to me that would answer some of your questions if you define that, but that's just a observation.
It's very useful. The comment's useful. Are we talking to, who are we
So I
talking,
don't-
who are we talking to and how are they getting
So
it?
if we,
Yeah,
right,
Because that's, not everyone should have a voice, but everyone who should have a voice
should have a voice, right.
so if we're gonna ask a renter is not gonna get a tax bill.
Right.
So we want to be sure that every resident, whether they're renting or owning, or living in an in-law, free of charge, gets the opportunity. So we may want to add the other. I can't answer this question. My housing is provided by the church. I don't own it. I don't pay taxes on
Yeah,
it.
parsonage, right, okay.
So and that's always been a problem for, most churches don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Because they encourage their pastor to own their home, because that's what the wise thing to do, I guess. But then other churches do have a parsonage, and it's cost effective to them to provide the housing that way.
Right.
Than to have to pay that full salary, on that. So I don't know if other fits sufficiently in the question?
Other with comment.
Yeah, that works.
Is this an 18-plus survey?
It does ask to give your age range.
Yes.
Oh, you're right, it
It'd be a
does say that.
voting.
20 or under. So, should it, to the public comment, should it be? Is a 14-year-old's response? Are we gonna, I'm not saying yes or no. I'm posing the question to the group. If a 10-year-old responds to this, is that part of the data set we should look at?
No. No, I mean,
Because this just says
That goes
20 or
back to
under.
if the information is going to be taken in the aggregate.
Yeah.
Or if it's going to have cross-sections.
Right.
Right, and I think the analytics on this, that's the direction that we had, is that would be, then that can get teased out easily.
So, and just for other filters and whether we care or not, is it appropriate to say, so this says 20 or under, probably better, older is better frankly, but, is this, 18, are we talking about 18 is what we're gonna care, when we're gonna, apply it to the data set, 18?
yeah, I think that number should change.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So it says, do you own or rent your home, or other with comment,
Yeah.
right? Good to 4?
Yes.
Yeah, it's gonna be imperfect, but, so, yes.
Philip?
Yeah, I was just still thinking about who is filling out the survey, how that works. Like, I'm thinking of the census where it's, someone is filling out on behalf of the household.
Right.
I imagine that makes sense for this as well.
That's actually a
So-
good question.
It goes to the comment,
good
which is a
question.
good one,
Right, yeah.
and it's,
There may be statutory requirements or statutory limitations as well.
so, is it incumbent upon the instructions to, to say anything to that effect, right? I was actually gonna see if we could add something in here, but,
So that would be, let's think about that as far as this opening paragraph.
but, right,
So we don't need to address that tonight, but that's something I want you to review. And that we make it plain that this is for the voting population of the town.
yeah, I think
And
that's right.
that way will help, 18 and up is the voting population.
From Amherst, instructions are, all adults 18 or older residing in Amherst or representing an Amherst business are encouraged to complete this questionnaire.
Yeah, no, that's useful, yeah.
Yes,
So when we get to the delivery method, that will
Right.
resurface.
Yeah,
yeah, because we want to use as much media available to us to, whether it's going in with the tax bill, mass mailing, what have you.
So, yeah, all adults, residents,
Right.
yeah.
totally.
Type of housing,
Okay, what type, question, so we're good on 4 now?
yes.
Other with comment, right?
Yeah.
What type of housing do you live in?
Yeah, it's,
And we put second homes. Second home? There's another one. And then other.
right. I don't, it's fine with me.
Is that good?
Well, I think second home detracts from the meaning of the question. We're
I
just
think
like-
you're right, actually.
We're just trying to ascertain, like,
Oh,
what
yeah,
what
yeah,
is,
yeah,
what
yeah.
is the structure?
You're right, you're right,
Yeah.
Structure.
you're right.
Agreed.
Okay, so we'll strike second home. All right, so 5's good?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
six is fine to me.
Can we rephrase that so that it's not like, how long have you lived in where, number of years and months, years/months,
Okay,
as opposed to 2 different things? Does that work? Or is it necessary for delineating the spectrum of information to have it like that?
What comes to mind, I don't think the months are value add. In terms of, if you wanted to do ranges, similar to the ages,
less than 1 year.
less than a year, and then from there
1 to
it's,
5, 5 to 10.
yeah, if it's, increments of 5 or whatever the.
So that would be easier to document than having to look at each individual number, right?
Yeah,
It would be able to aggregate it into segments.
So let's do that. So what are we gonna say for 6 here? One,
I'm gonna go to the highest end, so we're gonna have respondents that have been in town.
oh, that's true, yeah, you would,
You go up to potentially even 80+ years.
It'd be fun to know that.
What's that?
It'd be fun. It'd be fun to know.
Yeah. Because this is what age group are you in? How long have you lived?
is it, yeah, I mean, it's simply, this goes back to the survey structure, like, is it just gonna, what's easier, frankly? I mean, I don't, this is more of like.
Probably like
a method thing.
5,
I don't-
6
I don't-
range
We all know what
options.
this is asking, so however is the easiest way for the survey to ask it, you know?
oh, we can just leave it the way it is.
It's fine with me. Again, I know what this is asking, so it's not. I
Take
don't
out the
want-
months?
Yeah, it's fine, yeah, number of years, and they can say less than 1. You can say 1. If you're here for 7 months, you're here for a year. It's
So we're gonna take
it's
the
not
number of
end
months
world.
out?
Yeah,
Yeah. For both? Okay. So that's 6 and 7 done.
yeah.
I think we need to, well, I would like us to address age group 18 to 20.
Yeah.
And then the other, everything else is like a 10-year segment, except for 45 to 64. And that's 42%
Yeah, it's the
of
largest.
our population that reported. So I'd prefer to see 45 to 54, 54 to 64, 65 to 74, and 75 and over.
Sure.
Fine.
Agree on both ends?
because,
A little more granular, yeah.
yeah, that way it's, I mean, the average male life expectancy right now is 78. I think. Yeah, and ladies is 80 or 81 or something like that, so,
Sure, done.
does that work?
Yes.
How many adults in your household?
Why do we ask that?
Why? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just a curiosity. 'cause-
Single-family home, single-parent homes?
Well, that may also, it would capture, although it's not phrased to capture specifically, you know, how many children, how many of your adult children live with you? It does capture that. It doesn't explicitly say that. I am interested in that, actually, just full stop.
Well, it's also gonna give you the idea of what we call a nuclear family may not be that for a particular family. It may be that you've
Yeah.
got parents, grandparents, and maybe even great-grandparents
Yeah.
living in the same household.
No, I like the question, and I like the spirit of the question. It probably doesn't need to be more
Okay,
granular than that,
so,
in my opinion. I could be
so we're
swayed on
good
it.
with that?
Yeah, it's fine, it's fine.
So how do I
We're-
interpret that?
We're never gonna know, right, like, I don't know who is gonna be using the data or for what, and we don't have to, but, we don't know if these are like people subletting, roommate situations, family adults. That's potentially fine. That could be a little, you know,
Yeah, but so
I
how
agree
would
with you.
that, how
We
would that, the lowercase detail help
I
us
don't know if we
understand
can't get all
how to
that,
cast
but-
a vision for,
Well, I can answer that. Is your town a town where you can have multi-generational living, not in the same home? Can you live in the town you grew up, can you buy a house in the town you grew up in? That will help, that data would help us determine the answer to that question.
okay.
Now, does it require a more granular question than this to tease it out? Maybe. I'm not campaigning
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
more granular
Yeah,
question either way.
Okay.
But that's how I feel about it.
Okay,
Does that make sense? Does
No,
it?
it makes sense. I
Yeah.
think, given the nature of the conversation, I'm going to, if that's what we're curious about, I think as we go through the survey, then find a way to ask
Yeah, okay,
more explicitly.
Right.
fair enough.
In a way that's teasing it out of,
Fair
and that brings to the question of, if that's the direction, Bill, I'm curious, again, from a planning standpoint, does that question sort of bring any insight or provide direction for the planning board?
Yeah,
From, okay,
yes.
well, we have 30% three adult households, comma,
Yeah,
and.
yeah.
Because I agree with Phil, less is more, just more high-impact questions.
right. All it does is prove that we have single-family homes predominantly, right? That will help, because that's how the answers are, 12.5%, one adult, 79.5% are two
How
adults.
about we ask people to classify your household? How would you classify your household? Single adult, or single,
Multi-generational.
multi-generational, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
that
I
hits
do think
Dan's-
we would need to lay that as an option. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think we would need to say, single-family, multi-generational.
Yes.
You know, yeah.
Yes.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves, but yes.
no, this
but
is
this-
pertinent, yeah, I
yeah.
think, yeah.
No, in the spirit of whether or not this question's, because I feel myself leaning towards removing it.
Okay.
And, because it seems like the spirit of the question as this conversation is taking place is to really have an understanding of what the composition is and how somebody would define it, how would you classify your household?
Okay,
In getting to that more direct question,
right.
I think composition is key for me on this question.
composition.
And you're
Yeah,
saying
that was your
is-
word, yeah.
Okay,
And you're saying that's, mining for that data is better served somewhere else than this question
As a
in this way?
dedicated question.
Okay, yeah, okay, I understand that.
So there's energy around that
Yeah,
topic.
So wait a minute, let's make note of that so we don't forget it.
So I'm keeping a note here, putting on for, this is number 9? Yeah.
And potentially connected to number 11.
So.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's,
yeah, right.
I'm gonna add it under housing and zoning, because it's, how would you define your household? And what were the options? Single family
Multi-generational,
and
so like
Traditional.
subletting roommates.
multi-gen,
Traditional one, I don't-
Yeah, right.
is that a good word to use, traditional?
I did for the it's related, but not implicit in this question. I am curious about marital status, actually, in here, and having that question answered. It is a different question,
Okay.
again, but.
Well, I just got
Yeah.
a note that I throw it over there, so. All right, so let's,
Yeah,
so let's add that. Right after age group, make number 9, what is your marital status?
And a suggestion just to have on our radar, when we get to ordering,
Yeah,
right, in terms of
yes,
congregating, questions about the person, then the household, because it kind of goes between, we ask questions, currently it asks questions about the style of home, then about the person, goes back to, so I think that just from
Yeah,
when we get to
I know what you're saying.
more fine tuning,
I know what
I
you're
think
saying.
those will come up.
yeah.
so 9 will be marital status, 10 will be how many adults in your household?
Why do we care about marital status?
Well, so it's fair to ask, would the planning board, I brought it up from a demographic interest, because I think it matters in family composition and household, to the point of the questions that we're asking around generational, et cetera. The actual question is important, I would posit to Bill. Is it important to planning? And maybe the answer is no. But I would assume if we're interested in demographics, if planning is interested in demographics, planning would also be interested in marital status.
Yes, I would agree. Not to say that would be, boom, you know.
Well, it's a data
you-
point, like anything else.
You have to add like married, yes or no, or like partner or something.
Right.
It's like I've been with mine for years and years and years. We're not married, but it's effectively, it's a similar arrangement, so.
I'm okay with putting options. That's-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then,
Yeah. It's demographics.
10 will be how many adults, 11 will be how many children,
Yep.
and then 12 will be education. I don't know why they put it that way, because it was like,
Yeah, it's,
education piece, you identifying household, and then you ask how many
yeah,
kids
you throw it
got.
in there, and then you have, it's jarring,
Yeah.
to your point about, yeah.
And the other towns, they do like an income question.
I
Relevant.
did think that also, again, it goes back, I would say from a demographics, it probably helps.
So if you looked at the previous document, the report, there's a whole section on demographics
Yeah,
that are built from information that's not in the questionnaire.
sure.
So like, that's why I gave you this New Hampshire Employment Security information. Because that's what I looked at as far as population growth, and what they proposed in here never was realized.
Yeah,
And, you know, where we are and we are not, based on that information, a bedroom community. Because I was the impression that the number was higher for those commuting out of town to work. When this reports that, did I read this? 64% work in town. And I thought it was the opposite.
Yeah, is that true?
That's
Well,
what this
everyone works
says.
from home now.
Yeah,
Commute to other, and that's as of 6/19.
right.
23, so, commute to another New Hampshire community is 33%, and then 2.9 out of state. You, when you're going down Concord Stage Road on a weekday morning, you wonder if there's anybody left in town,
Right.
you know?
Well, and I think it's important to note, the purpose of this is not to find out what our demographics are. The purpose of the demographic questions here are to inform us which demographics are answering in which way.
Correct.
So that's
That's
what we're-
it.
Correlation to the
Yeah,
respondents.
that's, and I think the planning board is interested in that.
Right.
These types of people, these types of townsfolk have their vision. This is these types of people's vision, up and down the spectrum. Not up and down,
Right.
but whatever, across the spectrum.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's where that overall finding response,
So, to your point, and what did you say, it was in Amherst?
Oh, I asked about income, was that my point?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just
in
a
Amherst.
consideration, yes or no?
Yeah, I would
Yes.
consider it, yeah.
Actually, I think it's a missing piece currently.
Okay, yeah.
When we think of the spirit of asking this survey, what it's tied to identifying priorities, it naturally starts to lean into, when we're talking about priorities, is feasibility.
Yeah.
Right?
right,
Yeah, and these people at these incomes prioritize X.
Right.
These people at these incomes prioritize, maybe they both prioritize X, but whatever, or X and Y.
Well, just one item I think that would consolidate, Bill, is the question, I'm not sure what the numbering is now, but how many adults are in the household, how many children? Potentially one question was the composition of your household, and then fill in the blank for adults and fill in the blank for children,
Yep.
and put a
Done.
number in.
combined, yep, that would work. So that's 10. And then 10 is 11.
We are 5 minutes until the hour, just saying. We can go past that, obviously, just mentioning.
And then 12 is income. Okay. Cool. I think Greg reminded us last time of how many respondents there were. 200, you said? I think that's what.
222.
My recollection is you got about 10% of
Right,
previous
yeah.
survey, but that's.
Survey deadline of November.
We had the 10%, but 10% was 200?
No,
That can't be right.
it's a total of 315
Okay,
surveys
yeah,
were
that-
returned for a response rate of 9.6.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
I heard 9.6, what was the
Yeah.
number?
315 surveys
315.
as of, so they distributed 3,274 household, to 3,274 households,
Okay.
and through the post office. 315 surveys were returned for a response rate of 9.6. Returned either through the mail, or dropped off at collection
Yeah,
boxes at town.
and that was a fully manual, there was no digital,
Correct.
yeah, okay.
And that was 9.6 of the survey
Of-
sent.
okay, thank you.
Not of the population, not of known households.
Yeah.
just
Thank you.
9.6% of the survey sent out came back.
And they
Correct.
were sent out based on, and not to fall down this rabbit hole, but they were sent out, that was the tax bill, or,
No, it was a general mailing. It wasn't a tax bill.
and why was it 3,000 instead of, why was it 3,000? Just a general mailing?
3,274 households.
Okay, I understand.
Households, not
I-
per people.
Yep, I understand. Nope.
Probably, it
You
was
bet.
probably unique mailing addresses or something.
Yeah.
You answered my
I
question.
mean, that is brought out in,
Yep.
in this demographics. Let's see. It's over here. Where did I say, okay. Single housing, total housing units, right, a year ago is 4,026.
Okay, so that makes
So
sense.
in
Three-
20 years, we've only gotten 800 more housing.
Right.
Which is a very minimal growth, minimal growth rate, but, okay.
Before moving to the next section, Dan did just make mention of the time. If you're trying to keep a hard stop there, Bill, from a procedure standpoint, if we still have a quorum, can we continue to do work and use it as a launching pad for next meeting? And keep it in the notes and if you have an appointment?
Oh, I don't have an
Because
appointment.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Oh, okay. I don't know if they-
There's a method
We're
rather
just a
than
method to our madness,
necessity.
not to
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
overtax our creativity.
I mean, so I
mean, I don't-
agreed with the hour. I would say we do get at least through transportation. I think we can do
We can
that.
do one more
yeah.
section.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think we get through, yeah,
Feel like a good energy going.
yeah.
My notes for transportation, I just crossed off the whole section. That was,
Well, I would agree
That's interesting. Yeah.
in some respect,
Yeah.
but also
Yeah, well, sorry, go ahead, Bill.
some of the responses help us to be discerning about how people understand the community. And granted, that's, again, 20 years ago. My overall response was reported information not very helpful.
To the
And-
section,
To the section, because it doesn't give us anything. Because all the concerns are state highways
yeah. Good
that
point.
our plan can affect. You know, unless we put into the plan, and that's outside the parameters of the planning board, or even the zoning, that we can't implement things that affect
Yeah,
state. You know, it's like when people come to us, say, for instance, that are living on the lake. Well, there's certain things, building-wise, we can enforce, but you have shoreline protections that are
Yeah.
not governed by us.
Yeah.
They're governed by the state. The DES is involved in septic systems, not our design development. And even that, any septic system is a state thing, not a town thing. So those types of things that come out here, that
yeah,
the only thing that we could say is sidewalks and streetlights within the town center. But then you get certain rulings on light pollution.
well, is one way to, I guess we wouldn't be putting it in that, is it fair to say for this committee, any non-jurisdictional, non-jurisdictionally prudent questions should be struck, right? Does that,
I
does that make
feel
sense?
that way, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could definitely like, the next section, there's the general issues section. When there's like a drop-down menu, elaborate, you can tell us all you want about your transportation issues in the next section, probably. Depending on whether or not we have that next section.
well, I would also say, just for another nail, would be if we're going to, I apologize, I forget, but it was one or two. To me, actually, all of these questions read as suggestive, to be frank, because these all essentially say,
Yeah.
these are all suggestive, is
Yeah.
my point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are you on 14 now?
No, I'm sorry, still in the transportation.
Oh,
I'm-
sure,
I'm
okay.
concurring with the potential to strike the section.
And I agree with that, Dan. I've written here, I thought it was an interesting jump to, what degree do you have to,
Yeah.
what's the serious threat
Yeah,
to safety?
well, right, I mean,
So,
I think there's a way to, on this particular section, what I'm curious about is what we're trying to extract. Right?
Yeah, what
Right,
are
so
we-
these are sort of the literal application of saying, hey, feedback was around, roads that are not within our jurisdiction. 100% understood, those should be considered outside the bounds of this survey.
Yeah, right.
However, in the spirit of master plan, the sort of the comings and the goings, the availability from an infrastructure standpoint, to agree. You know, an example would be, and I don't think this is, I don't have the entirety of it, I'm putting it out to you to see if we build on it. It would be potentially, do residents feel that they have available transportation? Right, or do you, like, for instance, one that comes to mind would be, seniors in town, right? Do we have a growing population of seniors that potentially do not have accessibility to, whether it's, appointments, getting meds, whatever that it might be? That would be, from a transportation standpoint, something, as an example, that I think might,
Right, so there was a survey done through, I can't remember, through Southern New Hampshire, was it? Yes, about transportation that was done at the last voting period.
Yes.
And that information would be helpful to be a part of this report, ultimately, so that we have an understanding. So my approach to the need, as an example for pertaining to elderly, is I look at it from a biblical perspective. So my biblical perspective is that widows and orphans, the church needs to take care of. So if I have a widow who has family, I'm not responsible to take care of that person. Their family is. And we've robbed families of that, thinking we're doing the right thing. And it's really the family's responsibility. If the family isn't able, well, then we're going to pick up the ball and be involved with that. And so when, I think I had a conversation with Greg after our planning board meeting, I was providing transportation for a single guy who attends our church, who's from Deering, and has no family in the area. And I just happen to be his power of attorney for health and finances. It hasn't been implemented yet, but that gentleman, I provided those services to him because that was what I believe my response should be. I don't do that for every single person in my congregation, but they have family who should be picking up the ball, or if not, there are multiple people that are available to do that. Granted, there are some folks in town who fall in the crack. They have no family, no connections, because they've been out of the loop for a while, and there are services available for that. Okay, so
I'm all into that.
so when we look at public transportation, we don't need taxi, we don't need a bus. There is share ride already for seniors. There's Uber. Okay, so the taxi taxi delivers
I agree.
pizza, for that matter,
So,
to
yeah.
people.
So I think to the point of the section, which is kind of interesting, is, and I think it's what both of you are saying, this section is labeled transportation. These questions are asking about infrastructure and
Right.
zoning.
Correct.
These are two different, this
fair.
section is inappropriate. There is a disconnect here. We are not talking about the same thing in this section.
So with that said, I think,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, right? Like
Yes,
this,
I
you know, that has nothing to do with, do
Right.
I think this intersection is aesthetically pleasing? You know, that's a
I
different
think
thing.
we can eliminate this.
I have to agree with you, Bill, about the anecdote, by the way.
Yeah,
But
okay.
yes.
But we could easily look at answering that question in question 14
Okay.
by adding,
Yeah, adding a note about
What do you mean by
transportation in the non-infrastructure.
right.
Yeah, I agree with that. So back to.
So it would
Phil's
come
point.
down to how you want to ask
Well, yeah.
transportation, because transportation, I mean, yeah.
I'm closer to striking it, to be honest, the whole section. I
Oh,
don't.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't
I think
think,
we
I don't
should
think the
strike the
section is useful, frankly.
No.
As it's written.
Agreed. I think that if there's anything to, marginally extract from that it will present itself in other sections.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think we can move forward there.
Is that actually, I should know this, but is that actually, is there a, because it's worth, I guess, okay. Actually, never mind. I take
Before
it
we
back.
go to general issues, I just want to check if that everyone's in agreement on striking section 12.
I'm in agreement.
Yes.
Okay, yeah,
And yeah, and of course,
Or, pardon me,
We
question
can-
12.
yeah, yeah.
12 and 13.
12 and, I don't,
It is,
Yeah,
it
it's in-
is
it's
12 and
in the-
13, yeah.
It's in the,
Oh, there's a.
There's a whole bunch.
Yes. I'm like, I don't,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that took me for a loop when I
Yeah.
went from question 1 to question. Why is it 3, no 2?
and I like to, so moving on to general issues, I'd like to make a general comment before we get too much into the weeds of the options available. The question itself, so, and I made mention of this, well, this goes into the criteria, right? So this would be unique, clear, and discerning. And I think that this question's in jeopardy of that because there are, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, so it's like called 20 options, right? So there's a couple of things. One is that it does ask for there to be a ranking, top 5 general issues. I'm not sure if there was sort of adherence to that. I could take a look here, Bill, but if there was, somebody said, oh, I misread, and just put ones, right?
Yeah.
Skew the
Right.
data. So, yeah, but the limit, the 5
Yeah,
years.
the question's kind of,
Yeah.
based on the results, were the directions followed?
So that's part of the puzzle that later on, there are a couple of other items that give you a summary that these were all this. Well, how did you come to that when there were 5 categories?
Yeah.
And you don't report each category? And it sounds like the planning board gave instruction to not include that information. And it was like, as I sat on the board discussing this, there was at least one member who was there at the time who felt he didn't have much say in what was reported and what was done.
Okay.
So it begs the question as to why that was important to hold back on this certain information as opposed to giving us the full detail. And when you look at, the next question, you get all the information on question 15. You get all the percentages that are there.
Okay, so they are.
Whereas this other, that's ranked in percentages, but it doesn't tell you the numbers as to each particular category,
Yeah.
you know?
So is that, yeah, so Sean, so it seems like we have a diagnosis.
Right.
There's some proof of that diagnosis. What's the,
That's why I think
What's
the
the change?
mitigation, so to mitigate it, what I propose is that, one is there's a consolidation of options. I think some of them there's a couple low-hanging fruit there that could go. For instance, improvement to Route 114. Again, if we were to say that's not within our jurisdiction.
can't do that anyway, right?
Right? So
All right, so if we were to let's just walk through this. Because
Okay.
one of the things that is blaring to me and the whole thing is that when we talk about tax burden, it's too high. But then everybody wants all these resources,
Right.
all these
It's a
programs.
It's a good point. Yep.
Okay? And that's telling of the intellect. Sorry.
Well, it's part of human nature.
No, I know-
I think broadly speaking.
I know what you're saying.
They don't want to pay for it, but they want it.
Yeah,
The fundamental tension.
Right.
yeah.
So if we were to walk through this,
You can ask that, though. You can say, services, do you want to pay for services, or do you not want services and not pay? Right?
right,
We could table that.
Well, I
point.
think
It's a good point,
a
but you can
potential,
ask that. You can ask it more eloquently than I just did, but you can ask that. And I think we should ask it, actually.
Bill, can you say more? Just to expand on your comment, you're starting to say there's a natural tension between more
Yeah,
services,
yeah,
less tax.
You want services, but you want less taxes, so what do you get? So the only way to solve that is grow your commercial entities to get a higher back, so when you you pay through the nose to live in Henniker.
Well, so the only point, so you're right. I would say yes, but the flip side of that is, there is a certain response rate that will be, I don't want higher taxes, and I am willing to forego services. That's all. That,
Right,
you know,
yeah, I agree.
That will be the lower response rate.
right.
Because you're right, that it will be the opposite, but I am saying capturing that is appropriate.
And I think that what, Bill, if what you're touching upon there is the action. Having data, having responses that become actionable,
Yeah.
Correct.
right?
Right.
And if when the chasm widens, if by that dynamic, then they naturally become inactionable.
So, yeah,
So,
yeah, and Bill, it is kind of the point, actually, almost of all of this, but is that,
and there's a
would
presumption that.
would you say getting rid of
The
like
presumption
tax
there's an
burden?
issue.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you,
No, no,
Dan.
it's okay.
Because I just wonder if, before getting into the responses, the actual question itself, right?
Please rank the top five.
Right, so the rank your top five, fine, right, top five issues. That-
So if we,
Oh, that's interesting.
That part, just, again, I don't mean to get into the wordsmithing, but I think is, again, if we're talking about not leading, it's a leading question in terms of, here's a list of issues.
Yeah.
Well,
Identify.
that is a point I was interested in bringing up. So like, there's the dangers of leading, of course, but then there's the dangers of, I'm opening up a survey and I have no idea what my top issues are. I'm just gonna be like,
Yeah,
I don't know, next question. But I like 40 things Hampstead gives me. Like, I'm like, you know what, that's a good idea. Like, I wouldn't have thought of that. So perhaps we should just give like lots of, we call them concerns or aspects in Hampstead.
so,
So I guess my point is sort of like, maybe we should step back from all of this and like potentially just brainstorm what are the concerns we could think of in 2024.
so basically then we're, question 14 deals, I think, with information that birthed out of the large group gathering.
Okay.
So then that was brought to, because it shows up with the town square business. And the 114 corridor, because even on that, the document, there's a concern that we work in conjunction with Goffstown pertaining to a roundabout at Elm Street. And they never did it, and they're not planning to, because they've addressed it with some nice granite islands, subdued islands to keep people in line. But they addressed the real bottleneck at Wallace with the new roundabout there. But it was like presumptuous of us as a community to make it part of our plan, to make it their plan. And it was like, I didn't understand the connection. Granted, there was a lot of people traveling that way, but we're also got a lot of people traveling north to Concord. And they're addressing that issue with some stoplights at exit 2, and now there's a 4-way stop at Page's Corner instead of just a 3-way stop. So they're addressing some of those concerns as far as coming and going. But I'm not sure if we rephrase it, top general issues that are facing where, instead of must be addressed,
that's better.
is one way, or
That
that
is better.
we recognize that some of these things are already being addressed in other questions. Is it, so we don't want to be leading. So if we're addressing a particular topic in 5 different places, we're leading. Right?
So,
I think that lends itself to an open text answer. As it initially hits me. Because if it's, let's say, if something rises to the surface as being an actual, let's say, issue or challenge, that will be top of mind. And I think what you said, Phil, is helpful in terms of, I think, gathering information, maybe in a different, if we're asking about challenges.
yeah. if
Because
we're- right.
because I think that will deliver what's actually top of mind and help hone in on priorities versus looking at 20 options and be like, well, yeah, because it becomes a trade-off. Like, in terms of like, well, like, yeah, the tax is definitely, that's an
Well, it also
issue,
becomes
and
a buffet.
for, and then housing. yeah.
Right. Right.
And,
And
well,
we're feeding it.
Yes. Correct.
And that's,
We've taken them to the Golden Corral. and
That's
said,
right.
This is what
It's,
we
hey,
have.
you're-
You can't order anything else but what we have.
Yes, it becomes a menu, you know, not to double down on the food analogy, but, you know, it becomes like, ooh, this sounds, yes, 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 and I know it's, you know, it becomes a menu, you know?
please tell me hold me accountable here if I'm, in violation of the criteria that I put forward. You know, because it's supposed to be clear, discerning, and unique.
Yeah.
Like, right, you know, and,
No.
I'm just in this particular,
I think,
and that's invitation for feedback.
well, if we're gonna look at it from that perspective, it's addressed over in the vision part. That whole question is that general issues are addressed in all those questions that deal with what's the best thing, what's the worst thing, what vision, one vision for where would you like, those types of things, because when you read the list of responses, it's addressing all of that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the part, I mean, when I looked at this, improvements to 114, that's, you know, the whole 114 corridor seems to be the place for economic development, and everybody wants downtown Ware to be more condensed, more density of population. Well, how's that gonna happen? Because our zoning would need to change, because it's a village district and you have limitations. So therefore, you can't add a housing development right downtown. Recreational activities is dealt with in question 15. Amount and location of new development, that's not a helpful question, because it doesn't tell you where and what.
Yeah.
New or upgraded town facilities, all that works. Town planner, town square, that doesn't,
And what does
agricultural,
improvement mean?
protecting drinking water quality and supply.
Well, so back to my point, I'm kind of thinking we start from scratch on concerns, general issues, and kind of take one from Hampstead's book and just get a bunch of new stuff in there, and they do like, how important is the following to you? I don't know that I necessarily like that strategy, because everything's important to everyone apparently, like everything's important, we get it. But
That's the
so we,
buffet analogy.
I understand that,
Yeah, yeah,
but
But is it, so if we're gonna look at, if we wanna keep this section and repopulate the information or the concern, and do it with a ranking system, where it's placed is inappropriate.
Okay.
It needs to be placed at the end or just before the vision section. Vision goals and, I think it's inclusive in
Or-
vision goals and objectives, and add that piece over here.
Well, is it inclusive to the point of redundancy?
Right,
also?
right.
So if it's inclusive to the point of redundancy, then do we strike it? It's a question, I'm asking.
I'm not sure I can answer that, about striking it, because I'm not sure I fully understand what Phil said, what your recommendation was.
oh no, I like the general issues section, I was just saying, it's just, we should come up with the new concerns.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
you
all of
don't
us
like
work-
these, you don't like these?
Yeah, no,
issues?
Okay,
none
the
of these
available
are
options.
applicable, I don't think.
Okay.
I mean, sure, some of them are, but I think we should just table it next session, just say like, each of us together we should all like come to the table with like our concerns, our neighbors' concerns, just get some concerns on the table and then think about, you know, maybe fresh next week, how to,
Are these,
So you
this.
recommend that we table number 14, question 14 to next week?
Yeah.
potentially, yeah.
Second that.
okay, sure.
But maybe like with like, a couple ideas for thinking
So-
until then.
And yeah,
So when you look,
I agree, last piece. To that point, is this issues or wants?
well, based on
You know-
my,
you know what I'm saying?
based on
Yeah.
my experience with the
Because those
small
are not the
groups,
same thing, but
the
these
groups,
they're
these
being
are-
mixed.
These are issues and wants at the same time.
So should they be?
No,
I agree, yeah.
I think, all right, so Hampstead's question number 3, when you think of Hampstead in 5, 10, or 20 years, what would you like to see? To be honest, I don't like the question, what's the worst part of where? It's not a constructive.
I totally agree with
It's not a constructive experience.
It
Mine-
is,
And so now you're just feeding into,
Mine is phrased, if you could change one thing about our town, what would it be?
right,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. So I'm thinking that these general issues are all addressed in the rest of the document. And we may not need that section at all.
well, okay.
But we're still gonna table it until
yeah.
next time. And as we work, we'll go back to this
Okay.
to address that. Okay?
And so with our, if we're talking about homework assignments, maybe, one of the things that stood out to me going through this and looking at the responses, the two things I'd like to highlight, so the marinade. One is to build off the commentary connected to question 14, is the order of questions in terms of asking for description to the affirmative, right, to extract that information, that's really important. And then to ask what areas perhaps not meeting the mark, like where we're not currently meeting the mark. So
Yeah.
define success, go
Right.
back,
And
see where
degrees,
there's some
yeah.
gap, and then identify some of the gaps. So it's, the spirit of that question, to Phil's recommendation, I think exists. It's, as we're thinking about that, the placement. The second item, bring your attention to the end of the questionnaire. One of the things that I found interesting, and you had just sort of touched upon it, Bill, with the question around water. I remember the survey structure, design, prior life. There was a question around, do you sort of agree or disagree to the level that the organization supports the community? Sort of a question that doesn't have no as an option.
Yeah.
Okay, there's an innate finality of the whole item,
Yes.
right? That's why if you look at the responses, you're going to see very high response rates, because not having clean groundwater,
Yeah.
right, it's really not an option. Like, that is a foundational expectation of, right, that's happening.
Yeah.
That is not in contrast to other items. And so I bring that up, and you look at the last questions around when there was descriptions of pardon me, what I found interesting were the answers to question, and I'm getting ahead, but this is just to think.
Yep.
Right. I thought what was interesting is question 27. What was interesting, there's a contrast there that
Yeah.
surfaced to me, which was the survey up to that point was a bit and by design, mechanical, more, less.
I know what you're
Less
saying.
development, quiet,
I know what you're saying.
these items. However, the interesting part when it started to ask about what are the challenges within where, a lot of these are qualitative.
Yes.
About the sense of community. So I just thought that was interesting, and I'm not sure if there was questions that maybe we want to build off of that when we come back to questions. I just thought it was
Yeah.
interesting, we're talking about, not enough community spirit, does not feel like a town, lack of sense of community, lack of community events, family events. The town center kind of comes back into that.
Great.
So
So, yeah.
I am getting ahead, I just.
No. So that was a good point of, instead of looking just at the questions for the vision part, take and discern whether these things are presently truthful.
Yeah.
And those that are presently truthful, we could use as a barometer to ask a subsequent question, as opposed to just leaving it open and be more purposeful in those final questions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that we're not being redundant. Well, we got too many dirt roads. Well, we're
Yeah.
a huge town. It doesn't, and that's your tax burden.
Right.
Or, traveling the Route 114 corridor to get to I-93 as a bad thing. Well, how else?
Yeah.
We're gonna put an airport, helicopter rides? I don't know.
And this goes to is this an issue or is this a want?
Right. And then,
On the
and then to,
subcontext
then
of
to
the whole
speak,
question, which are, sorry, go ahead.
right. You're right.
Yeah.
To speak to the sense of community, that depends upon what you're involved with,
I mean,
you know? If you're not involved in the community, you're not gonna have a sense of community.
correct.
You know, if everything you do is centered in Concord, and that's where you spend all your discretionary time, you're not gonna have a sense of community
And is
here.
it the role of planning to functionally drive community, as a charter? I don't think,
I
I don't
think
think it is, frankly.
Within the context,
That, you know,
within the context of question 15, is it
Yeah.
15?
Well,
Question
from an
15,
infrastructure
from an-
standpoint.
right.
It is.
Yeah.
Because of providing those services opportunities, we used to play just tennis over here at the library when my boys were younger. Well, now they got pickleball going like crazy over there, and it's like, who knew?
well, right, and I would say that's a function of community,
community, a result of, an expression of.
Yeah, right, and it's not this is not an input question, right?
Right, right. Okay.
To a certain, yeah, agreed. At a certain level, right? So that in terms of there's,
I'm not saying it's totally agnostic, but I am saying it is not, creative, it is not the origin of.
yeah, the master plan doesn't say we're gonna have bingo on Thursdays.
Right, yes, that's right,
Right.
yeah, that's right.
However,
come
what
on.
could surface, what could surface out of that, potentially is, what resources and energy is there around recreational.
Sure.
Either opportunities, structures, senior center, whatever, that sort of,
Fair enough, yeah.
but tread carefully, I said.
Yeah, and again, we're looking to complete the survey. The survey is looking to ascertain data. That data has to be actionable and within the scope of planning, right? So let's not, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, we still would want, even though it may not affect planning, we want that subjective perspective.
Fair.
Because it teaches us the dynamic of the respondent as to what their priority and their interests are.
Fair enough.
Okay, so
Yes.
then that can help us to discern whether we put a movie theater in, or whether we put a new sports complex under a dome like Milford or Hooksett or Goffstown Back
Could impact
Road.
zoning
Yeah,
Fair enough.
considerations there.
yeah,
I think we're harmonizing.
Yeah, we are.
yeah. Okay,
Our-
so.
Our homework.
So homework is to continue to work, and I think 14 is just gonna be morphed into the last section.
Okay.
I don't think it should be where it is. So we have minutes that we need to approve. Did you look at them?
Last
Wrap
week's,
up
yeah.
now for brief comments for you.
Sure.
I'll keep them short.
Greg Smith, Reservoir Drive. Just some comments as I've been watching. First, I want to say, I think you guys are making enormous progress as I've watched you go from struggling with question 1 to thinking more about what you really want to learn from the survey. That's very encouraging to me. I think you guys are doing a great job. And I just want to offer a couple of ideas for you, which you were free, of course, to ignore. I thought one of your initial questions was, who do you want to be the respondents? Okay, and I'm just going to offer a candidate list, which is, I think you ought to be interested in people who are legal residents, but not minors, in Ware, who are property owners in Ware, whether they're residents or not, who are business owners for businesses that exist or operate in Ware, whether they're residents or not, and of course, anyone who votes. And that would probably, legal residents and voters is probably a nearly overlapping Venn diagram. So that's just some ideas for you. I think it's interesting, you have chosen to address this from the questions point of view. Personally, I always like to start with, what do I want to learn, and let that drive the questions. But what I'm hearing is you're moving in that direction as you work through the questions. You're trying to think, what is it you're trying to learn? So I say that's awesome. Random comment, probably respondents are not going to answer every question, so just maybe keep that in the back of your mind, because there was one point where, you were talking about getting the statistics on it, and you're going to have to deal with some noise and some gaps in the data. You touched upon reporting. I feel your pain, Pastor Stockhouse, about seeing some conclusions but not the substance behind them. A best practice for me was always to offer a summary in the reporting, but always include all the raw data so that there's complete transparency and someone can check the work and it makes sure everyone's accountable and transparent. So that's just another idea for you. I think that your discussion around addressing the tension between what people want and what people are willing to pay for, I think it's fair, personally, to ask that question. Okay, like you can do it by rank ordering stuff, but you can also ask, well, how much are you willing to pay for this? What trade-offs would you accept? Now, there's lots of ways to ask that, but I think it's fair to ask that of people. And you were also struggling a little bit. You noticed that there were some good ideas in some of the surveys that you hadn't thought of. So if you only ask an open-ended question, those might not be elicited. But if you just show them a list, now you're leading them. Well, you can actually do both, right? You could ask an open-ended question first, and then you could also include, well, what would you prioritize or what would you prefer amongst this list? You don't have to do one or the other. That was just a thought that came to my mind as I was listening. Once again, thank you for letting me have some input in this. I think you guys are doing a great job. I'm really heartened to see this going in this way. So thank you.
To pick up on that comment you made about not all the questions will be answered, that's a statistic I want to know. And that's what the Stratford report tells you, how many answered and how many skipped. And that would be, that's going to be telling if it's blaring like 90% it's this, but over half the population didn't answer the question. It now puts a perspective on what value that answer is. So if you get 5 people and answered it and there's 10 people who didn't answer it, that means that there's not a lot of weight there.
You have just a vocal minority.
Right.
Or do you have a real, sorry.
So
Right,
we're
you're-
making
yeah.
sure,
You will tend
making
to have
sure,
the former.
yeah, just
You're gonna get a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be something as far as trying to make the plan after the fact, after the questions are answered, that we would want to know. And that would be, I guess, when it comes to that time, we would want to ask a harder question, how do we interpret that perspective without inferring? Nobody really wants this because nobody really answered it, but there was some who did. So we don't want to devalue those who did either, so they may not be a high priority as far as the planning process, but it's still part of the information given to us. All right. Anything else, other? Minutes, did you look at the minutes?
I did
Yes,
not.
From last week.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you look at the minutes?
I hope so.
I regrettably did not
ChatGPT
review my own minutes.
Happy to do some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just do, I know we have to approve.
I didn't find any issues. I thought it
Yeah.
was
Nope, that-
succinct
Did a
and,
good job, actually.
Phil wrote them, so. So Phil, no.
I don't think I have to abstain from voting, no, I think I can approve.
yeah, just don't make the motion.
Right, that's true.
Thank you.
So, we need a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay?
Second.
Second it. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye. No opposed, no abstains. Okay, approved. All right, so our next meeting is August
21st.
21st. at 7 PM, and you will be absent.
I will not.
Okay.
Correct,
And Salem will be here.
correct.
Okay. And I'll send out a copy of the document with everything that we want to change in red. So you know
Okay. Where we're at,
where we're at.
yeah.
Bill, can you also, when you send that out, is there a modifiable file? Do you have, is this a Word file?
That's a
Is
Word
it-
file.
that-
I already sent it.
Oh, it's modifiable, oh, perfect.
Yeah.
It's a Word document.
It's a Word document.
I didn't
I
do
don't
it
know
in
if
a
it's
PDF.
locked or,
Yeah.
No, it's totally unlocked.
okay.
Yeah, it's not on my Google Docs, it's just, it's an ancient Word document.
No, that's
Because
right.
I don't have, I've been using Open Office for the last 15 years, so, I can save it as a 97 doc, not docx,
Really?
so. You still can open it in docx, so. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second that?
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Okay. Phil. and Sean. Passed. Okay, what time? 8:40. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys. Good job. Good work, thanks, Bill. Yeah.
So you know, we're still live streaming.
Yeah, shut your mics off.